So on this episode of Jesters Garage, we're going to cover what Rob did with SAS'PRILLA's dash.
You made some coffee or something?
Don't you got some work to do?
Yeah. In the front half of this video, I'll be interviewing Rob MEACHAM as he explains what he did to SAS'PRILLA's dashboard. And on the second half of this video, we're going to have a detailed chronological view of all the slicing and dicing he did on that same dashboard. Stay tuned. Anybody that sat in a truck like this, when you're sitting there straightforward behind the regular old column, really confined to the center, and it became pretty apparent. I've been in one of these trucks for decades, and I know that it's best to push that over if you feel like doing it.
Right, and I think the only reason it was over is they had a giant steering wheel, no power steering.
Right.
It had the leverage, and then you still had to have room for your knuckles on the left side.
Right.
And so they just slid it over a little bit, and it worked fine until you get a smaller steering wheel in there, then you notice
Yeah, if you sit where you want to sit, then your steering wheel's off.
Right.
But again, it was that size of the steering wheel.
Right.
So Jim was completely okay with you spending the time to move stuff around.
Right, yeah, we sliced and diced basically every section except for the top and the center and moved it to their more appropriate location.
What, about an inch or something?
We moved the cluster over, we moved that about an inch and a quarter. We all sat in it, figured where we thought the center was. We took the average of 3 or 4 guys, I think it was that night.
And did you move the glove box the same?
Right, as we moved the steering column over, that made the cluster off center. And so we cut out the cluster, moved it over, I think it was 1.5 inches, because it had the center off of the 1.25 inches we moved.
Oh, so the original cluster and the original steering column weren't really totally in line.
They weren't in line, especially after we moved the column over.
Yeah.
So we had to move it even more. Right. And of course that takes the glove box and the symmetry's off there.
Right.
It looks like it's too close to center. So we cut that out and moved it to the outside.
And you did both the sides, 2 different techniques.
Yeah, the difference was that the glove box, there's a section where the dash comes down an arc and it pins back for the stainless band that goes across it. Well, on the driver's side that went below the cluster, on the passenger side that actually went across the bottom of the glove box itself. Yeah. And so the symmetry wasn't good there, so we ended up taking and cutting the glove box up above that line.
Right.
And welding that section back in after we had sectioned it to move it to the outside, the same amount we moved the cluster.
Yeah. And so on the cluster, you took the cluster out, yay big, moved it over. On the glove box, you cut all the way down to the bottom.
Right.
And then moved it over and then put a slice in there and then changed the bottom of the glove box because of the stripe.
Right. The reason for that was on the driver's side, we were moving the cluster or the steering column base. We moved that over a little bit. Whereas on the passenger side, we go all the way to the bottom. That made one less horizontal line where we had to weld the whole length up.
Right.
And so that made it simpler.
Oh yeah, because you're only talking about this much on twice instead of this much.
Yes, yes.
And you have that hinge stuff that's all involved.
Right.
Right, because it all goes down low, and that would have been a real mess.
Right, exactly.
And then you also, you cut your own strip, I noticed.
We made our own strips. We actually had to make our own hinge arms also.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Because the hole, as it shortened, we had to get a longer hinge arm to come around the opening.
Okay, you cut that on the CNC.
Yeah, we just designed that in CNC and cut it out on the plastic panels.
Then after that, then it was time to work on the AC unit and the switches.
Right.
And so you had an ashtray and a few stock items that you kind of cut out of there.
Yeah, and they were kind of from the factory, kind of in there, kind of random. We wanted to get those all organized and something that made sense. Going from ignition switch and moving on up through the wiper switch, headlight switch, and so on. We wanted that all to flow and look like it belonged there instead of just one random place where it was.
Right. So then you nested all that together with some numbers that you come up with, and then you cut it out, and then realized you wanted to have a nice little soft bend underneath there.
Yeah. And just the way things go, we cut those things out, tried to put all the switches in, and just the shape of the back of the switches wouldn't let them jive where you went.
So you moved
it
around.
took 5 or 6 iterations to move them around and get them where they would all look together and they were neatly put together, close to each other. And then we had to put in, Jim would like to have 2 HVAC vents right in the center of the dash. He likes it blowing on them, so we had to incorporate that in.
Right.
So that's where the 2 rounded ends come from, is to complement that.
I like that. I like that. Now you just basically did kind of a 90-degree bend and then soft edged it and then shrunk it.
Yeah, just shrunk one side. We made the outer edges first and then filled the center in.
Yeah. Right. Nice.
That pretty much covers it.
Let's get all that. Oh, you forgot to turn the camera on.
Oh my God!
Anyway, that is SAS'PRILLA 3. It's all about the dash. Next time on SAS'PRILLA, the work that he did right here, and the crew too, how they rework all of this, and the hood sides that aren't on here right now. Super cool. Yeah, the hood sides are completely one-off. They got a teardrop shape. We made the tools and everything for this. We cut all the stuff out here on the premises and made the tools, stamped them out there. It's going to have the Art Deco strips through there. And so on SAS'PRILLA 4, we're going to cover the process of this part, and the hood sides. And then SAS'PRILLA 5, which it's all super cool to me. The SAS'PRILLA 5 is all about how we're wrapping up the wraparound and the doors. It's really, tell you what, it's a big dream, right?
But it's a lot of neat metal shaping in there.
Oh my goodness.
Not a lot of work, but it's going to come out well.
Yeah, this thing is completely one of a kind. And I've seen a lot of 46s. This is one of a kind. Absolutely one of a kind.
Yeah, and then 6 is the running boards.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a blip on each one of these. Now, running boards, that's over the top too.
It is.
And then it's eventually wire it and plumb it. And
Wire? Yeah. Someday we're going to drive this thing. That'll be something.
Yeah. Exactly. So, thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and
Don't forget to comment.
Don't forget to comment. Love your comments, by the way. If you can give us a comment, it knows which direction to go. I'm kind of new at this, not new at this sort of stuff, but I'm new at the production, so anyway, I'll probably edit that out.
Yeah. Blue underwear.
Yeah. Just for transparency. I'm an idiot. Yeah. All right.
Don't go away. Rob Meacham is going to be cutting some stuff up. Stay tuned. Here we go, all right? So after we had figured out how far we wanted to sit, we'd actually made the seat first. So that was actually written in stone. So that was over the 1.25 inches that he was talking about. And so it was a matter of moving the column drop over the appropriate amount. Then he basically started making his measurements and getting a real precise line that he could cut out. So using a square and a Sharpie, he made all the appropriate lines that he could just cut with a razor wheel. And like the old saying goes, measure twice, cut once. But my grandpa used to say, I cut it off 3 times and it's still too short. The biggest thing is keep your fingers out of the way, keep your face out of the line of the sparks, go slow and focus, and it'll be just right. this point, Rob did a test fit. Then he got his big fat Sharpie out and gave himself some base for a scribe line. The scribe lines work really, really good because you can sneak up on it better than you can a Sharpie line. So at that point, he did his cut and cleaned it all up, and he was ready to do some welding. At this stage, he decided to clamp it on with a couple of vice grip C-clamps, get it in position so he could start the welding process. But sometimes things move around and it's just best to hold it with your free hand. Again though, the clamps are very, very vital to get that exactly where you want it. At this point, he methodically moves around to keep it cool. And during one of the cooling stages, it's always a good idea to get all those impurities out of there. They are not your friend. And once again, the big black fatty came out to give us some etching background. Sometimes you just use an old school set of snips and a hammer. Cut it and flatten it out. And these are those strips that we were talking about previously. It's best just to take a brand new piece of 20 gauge or whatever the metal is and just make it fit, bend it, tweak it, get it exactly what you want. And then you have that methodical tack, reclamp, tack process once again. And occasionally, you'll have somebody come up and question, what the heck are you doing? I mean, really? You just cut up a dash.
I'm doing a filler piece.
Moving this over so it's centered to the steering wheel.
Oh my god.
Isn't that what you do on your stalkers?
And that, my friends, is the cluster. So let's get to the other side. On the glove box side, Rob scribed way above the button. He wanted to cut all that out, keep it intact. So he went ahead and did the fat Sharpie on that and then drew a really, really nice crisp line. Notice all the different techniques he's used with that divider and rulers, etc., to get a really, really good straight line to get that death wheel up against. And you can sand right up to that line. Works really good. If you take your time and do it right, it'll pay big dividends in the long run because you don't have so much gap to fill.
on the wiring.
Yep. Love drilling holes in new stuff.
Oh, we're almost ready. Let the cutting begin. And there you have it. She is just about cut out. Now, using the same technique he did on the gauge cluster, he's just going to go ahead and hold that thing in position. Real carefully. You focus in, and then you give that sucker a tack right up in the corner. Then, just work around the edges and keep it spot on. Occasionally, you have to hammer and dolly it, make sure everything's exactly where it needs to be. And who needs assistance when you've got some dead weight laying around? Rob's good help, Nate, needs to take his graduation day off.
All right, up next Friday, I peel off for a portion of the day.
Yeah, okay.
Got it.
If it makes you feel better, I'll do the same thing.
Twist your arm.
Again, those little custom built strips got to be perfectly fit to get a good weld.
Stick it.
And just like that, the glove box is tacked in. You have to stay on top of the cooling and the hammering of those welds. Well, that basically covers sectioning a 46 Chevrolet pickup dash to get you where you want to sit, look straight on, and be comfortable. The following photos are of the glove box area and the HVAC area. Hopefully this helps you. It certainly shows what we did to SAS'PRILLA. It's been a lot of fun working on this truck, and it's a privilege. And I hope some of this information and videos and pictures has been enlightening and entertaining. Again, leave us a thumbs up if you like this. Leave us a comment. And we'll be seeing you next time on Jesters Garage. Happy hot rodding.